Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Sinead Mullen from the OPR, and as indicated by Eamon there at the outset, it's been some time since this regional fora convened. I think it's maybe a while ago under the previous regional structures that this grouping have been together. So we thought it was timely, as with the changes there have been in the planning landscape since then, to maybe let me have the floor and just briefly bring everybody up to speed on the OPR and where we are. So apologies if you've heard some of this before. So we were established in April 2019, and we have our strategy statement published within 6 months of establishment, and we have just had our first annual report published for the year 2019. There's about 20 of us in the team in the office, and there are 3 teams in total, and we've just taken possession of our new offices in Park House, although we've not obviously all been there at the same time, just with the current climate. So our purpose emanates from the Mahon Tribunal, which sought to strengthen the independent oversight of the planning process through what has become our 3 main functions. So our first function is probably one that most commonly known, and that is the plan evaluations, where we assess statutory plans of the local government system. Our second relates to the reviews and examination of local authorities and Bord Pleanola in terms of systems and procedures. And our third, which is my day job, is building knowledge and information base and planning through training of local government members and staff. So having regard to those 3 key functions, whilst we're not an environmental authority like Suzanne and our earlier speakers, we were kindly invited by the EPA to join the SEA Forum, so that's why we are here today. I'll just take a quick look at our 3 functions, just to let everybody know what we do, and try and focus on where there's overlap with the environmental legislation. So assessment of statutory plans, we obviously evaluate local authority plans at a strategic level. You will be commonly aware that we make submissions at the pre-draft, pre-plan issues paper stage. We also make submissions at the draft plan stage, amendment stages, and our focus is really centred on climate change, and within the context, obviously, of ensuring consistency with the national plan and framework, the regional spatial guidelines, and all of the Section 28 guidelines. So in order to do this, we have actually developed a plans assessment methodology. It's in draft form at the minute, and we're just waiting to finalise that when hopefully the department's development plan guidelines are issued by the end of this year, and hopefully that will be available at that point. So what is the OPR's role in SEA, here you ask? And I suppose first of all, just to recap, we're not an environmental authority as per Article 6 of the directive. We are not a decision-making authority. That obviously rests with the elected members, but we do have a role in terms of the Section 28 guidelines, and in particular Section 10 mandatory objectives for making development plans, and Section 10.2n, there's this particular focus on that for our agenda that was given to the OPR when we were established. So therefore, we do pay very close attention in our plan evaluation function to the process and to make sure that it has been undertaken and documented. And we also find that the environmental reporting is an invaluable source of conducting our evaluations in our plans and assessments. Okay, our focus when we are conducting our plan evaluations is upon compact growth, transport, flooding, renewable energy, and we expect to see these addressed in the SEA, and particularly in the climate section. And most importantly, I think something that maybe is sort of forgot about is the interactions between the various factors and how one links with another. So that's a very important aspect of the environmental reporting. Key messages from the OPR, I suppose, would be that the SEA process should be objective, a truth-telling exercise in order for it to be meaningful. It should not be an advocate or a justification piece for a policy that's in a plan, and the focus on the climate, there should be a focus on the climate section and the interaction between policies. So just in terms of a good example that has emerged since our establishment in recent times, and that would be the recent draft Westmeath County Development Plan and its environmental report, which really did put a spotlight on where there was a conflicting policies and that would have an environmental impact. So that was a real good example of how the environmental report and the SEA process works. Poor examples, I'm not going to name, but there probably aren't any very poor examples, but poor example would be where there's a silence in relation to the actual environmental consequences of a policy. It's just glossed over, where an environmental report is just used as a justification and it lacks objectivity, and where there's a failure to track the plan making process. So as we're all familiar with the diagram, the plan making process and the tandem process of the SEA. So there should be a cross linkage between the two. And if anybody wants to learn any more about our submissions, they are all available on our website. Apologies, they're all available on our website, and there's a map where you can interrogate. So everything's up there and available if you want to read up more on the specifics of our plan evaluation side. Moving on to our second function, the reviews and examinations, perhaps less obviously linked to the subject matter today, so I'll just gloss over it. But at the instigation of the OPR under section 31AS or at the request of the Minister, we can conduct reviews and examinations. We look at systems and procedures, focus on good practice as well, and to highlight the successes of the planning system. And we are actually commencing a pilot next year of 5 local authorities. I believe they're in the process of being notified at this point. So the pilots that will be undertaken next year are going to be undertaken against a pilot methodology which was published earlier this year. Again, that's available for anybody if they want to read up on that, and it basically sets out the types of reviews and the criteria that will be looked at. Okay, just will move on now to my central role, and that is the research, training and public awareness role. And probably the lesser known aspect of the OPR is our statutory mandate to conduct education, research and training programs. Training for elected members and staff of regional and local authorities is actually stipulated in the Act, and research into planning matters, which is quite a broad term, relevant to the OPR's functions and or at the request of the Minister. So that's our brief. In order to achieve that, we have, as identified in our strategy statement, set up a NPKG group, which is the National Planning Knowledge Group, and that includes representatives from the higher education institutes, non-government organisations, planning institutes, government organisations. So that's to help us guide us along the way in relation to this, new brief on training, research and even the public awareness side of it. So where do you begin with that broad mandate? And we began by establishing a planning research framework, which is also published in September past. So this document sets out how we will address our research function, and it's almost 30 years since An Foras Forbitha was dissolved, so we've a bit of time to make up for there and a bit of ground to cover. I'll just maybe run through the framework just to give you a structure as to see how we are tackling the broad brief that we have. So first off, like any planning document, we have a goal, and that is to develop an effective research programme that addresses gaps in planning theory, practice and supports delivery of best practice in the system, with a mind obviously of greater public understanding and participation, and giving tools to practitioners and researchers. And we have objectives to promote sustainable development agenda, which is clearly a key part of the environmental SEA process. We want to provide confidence in the system, address knowledge gaps, work in partnership with other agencies, to advocate and support the use of technology, and to avoid repeating research that's already been conducted. And we're going to have a 2-year programme to outline specific projects. And the structure How do we carve it all up? So we have 3 strands, just we'll quickly run through the 3 strands. First up, we have planning issues. And now these are the core planning themes, the big issues, housing, urban regeneration. So they are to reflect current policy, but also in a responsive way. The second strand relates to performance, planning performance, and that's a focus that's on the systems behind the planning functions, identify trends, patterns, establish causes and linkages. And then the third strand is planning practice, and that is practical day-to-day assistance for practitioners and those working in local authorities and even in regional authorities. So we want to close the gap between the academic and the practitioner. How are we going to do all this, Sinead? And we have in terms of our framework, we've identified our delivery mechanism. So the delivery mechanism will be through direct commissioned work, projects, work that we produce ourselves, and projects that we commission, partnership projects with the likes of the RTPI that we published a report with earlier in the year, a few months ago, and work that is we are a contributor role, so that is where we bring a plan and voice to maybe another agency and join forces with another agency, and demonstration projects, that's practical on the ground projects that we would hope to get involved in. And in terms of what we're going to produce, we intend to produce at the one end of the scale research series reports, case study papers, practice notes, and then even practice applications, you know, literally sort of software tools and that. So there's just a range of tools that we envisage producing. Now, in order to select projects, we have our own criteria that I won't purport to go through that now, but that's in our framework. So we have a series of questions which we will evaluate projects as to whether we join a project or pursue a project. And then we have a project roadmap. So in terms of the precise projects, that is identified in our strategic plan and research program. And here you'll see, you may not be able to read all that, but you'll see strand 1 is the plan and issue, strand 2 is the plan and performance, and strand 3 is the plan and practice. And you can see the delivery options and the suggested output. And that's a program that we're working towards actively for the next 2 years. And there's a number of projects there that are directly linked to the environmental areas. And we have one particular project in mind in relation to development plan monitoring and SEA that we would hope to develop next year. So we have a number of projects that are advanced. We've joined as a contributor role to the EPA's 5-year report on achieving climate neutrality. So we'd hope to bring a plan and voice to that other piece of research led by the EPA. We've just published the measuring plan and outcomes, and which we engaged with Scotland, England, Wales, and the RTPI in that venture. We have a software development app. It's sort of a basic enough app, but we're hoping it will help people in the planning world at managing timelines, software tool for the development plan process. And we have a practice note on appropriate assessment screening to help practitioners on the ground. So those are projects that are advanced, ones published already, and we hope to be progressing those. There's a few projects in development in relation to the climate piece. We had some inputs with the department in relation to the forthcoming guidelines and development plans. We are also actively engaged with ICLRD in relation to a project on changing spatial relationships between home and workplace. And in the second strand, we are hoping to look at validations, Part 8s, traveller accommodation, and in the third strand, we're hoping to look at planning conditions in section 247. So just those are live, and we're hoping to progress soon in next year. With projects that are more conceptual at this stage, response to COVID-19, compact growth, brownfield land activation. So they will probably be the later half of 2021. And again, the project that we're keen to focus on and maybe hopefully work with the EPA on is planning, monitoring and development plan progress reports and SEA monitoring. So that will be one that's particularly useful for this group if we pursue that late next year. And obviously a lot of local authorities are in the throes of making their plans, so we'll probably get to that at the latter half of next year. Projects that we also wish to pursue, but we sort of obviously need to wait for the legislative framework to fall in place. The marine area, SEA, EIA, these are some of these projects have come from feedback that we've had with our stakeholders, and we're relying on evolving legislative framework coming out. Not least of which is Brexit on the transboundary issue. So just some other brief updates from the OPR training team. We have EcoWhy. Last year we had an episode co-sponsored by ourselves and Healthy Ireland, which aired at the beginning of this year, and it was very successful in terms of and one of their actual most successful episodes of the series. So we are now sponsoring 3 further episodes that will air in hopefully January, early next year, and some of you in the audience may actually have been partook in it, so thanks for that. We also have 3, we've had several webinars for councillor training during 2020. The first module was successfully completed there at the end of last month, and before lockdown earlier in the year we actually had a module that focused on environmental area, and we hope maybe that was of some benefit to you and your elected members in making your plans. And we are now kicking off tomorrow actually on the second module, which is focusing on implementing the development plan. Another just quick update, we are, some of you may be familiar with these old leaflets, and the IPI together with ourselves and the department are in the process of updating these, which are, they're actually pushing on at 15 years now at this stage, so we're in the process of updating these, and there'll be one actually focused on SEA, AA and appropriate assessment. And in terms of forthcoming training programme, in 2020 we were obviously been working on the background, building capacity and working in the background on staff training and engaging with our stakeholders. So into 2021 we're targeting March to have our first staff training webinar. We're hoping to work with some of the other agencies in the department, including hopefully the EPA, on rolling out training as and when new policy emerges, and we're hoping to do some more joint ventures with the professional institutes like we did earlier this year with the IPI. And we're also actually investigating some opportunities for formal courses with educational institutes and graduate programs, intern programs. So we have a few things in the pipeline, and we hope that 2021 will be getting stuck into the staff training and we'll be seeing more of you. So finally, if you have anything you want to follow up on, or if there's any ideas from emerging from today's speakers in relation to needs for training, by all means contact us. And I would also urge you all to register on our website for a newsletter for automatic updates. Thank you. I'll pass you back to the chair.